Beginning a brand new series today called Time of Your Life. And so for the next few weeks, we're going to talk about time. Now, it's such an interesting thing when it comes to time. One of the things that we all have in common as it relates to time is we are almost always in our culture conscious of what time it is because of our watches, because of our cell phones, if you're in school, because there's always a clock on the wall. And so a half a dozen times a day or a dozen times a day, you check to see what time it is. In fact, one of the most common questions, maybe the most common question you ask about time is, what time is it? Even while I'm preaching today, you're going to check your watch or you're going to check your cell phone to see how I'm doing, which is really kind of strange because, we let you out within a 1 or 2 or 3 minute window every single week, and still you're going to check to see how I'm doing. And the reason I let you out on time is because if I don't let you out on time, it creates exponential chaos all over Fulton County, okay? So we're good about that. But in spite of that, you're going to check your watch to see what time is it. Also, you need to know while I'm preaching, I have a big old giant clock down here in front of me on a screen, so I can always know what time it is. So we're very, very time conscious. Every once in a while, you'll lose yourself in a novel, or you'll lose yourself in a hobby, or you'll lose yourself in gardening, and you'll say something like this, well, I lost track of time. I lost track of the time. But very quickly, you recover, don't you? And you figure out what time it is. We're very, very time conscious. The problem is that's really not the most important question we should ask when it comes to time. And so for the next few weeks, I want us to begin asking a better question. In fact, as soon as I tell you what the question is, you're going to agree that's a better question. The better question as it relates to time is not what time is it, but what am I doing with my time? Not what time is it, but what am I doing with my time? The problem with always checking to see what time it is that it's a constant reminder of the thing that is most depressing about you. And that's this: your time is running out. Aren't you glad you came to church today? Your time is running out. And the problem is we have calendars that tell us how fast the months go by, how fast the years go by, and then we look at our watches and we see how fast the hours go by, we see how fast the minutes go by, and then some of you have a second hand on your clock and you have no idea what it's there for. It's to remind you how fast, because with the second hand, you can actually watch your life slipping away, tick by tick by tick by tick. It's just absolutely depressing. And in fact, the older you get, the faster it seems like time goes by. And you may know this, there's actually a scientific explanation as to why, as you get older, time seems to go faster. That's not just your imagination. You experience time as if it's going faster. When you were a kid, Christmas never got here. When you became an adult, it's Christmas like every time you turn around, it's almost Christmas, or there's something related to Christmas. And so we're constantly reminded. So one of the worst things you can ask is, what time is it? Because it's a reminder that your time is click, 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 tick, 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 just slipping away. Now, the whole idea of time going by quickly is actually a biblical theme. There's a great deal in the Bible about how quick time goes by. So I thought to start us off in this series, Time of Your Life, we look at some happy thoughts from the book of Job, because Job makes a couple of, what are you laughing at? We're making a couple of comments, those of you who read your Bible. Here's what Job says to kind of get our head in the game. He says, my days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle, and they come to an end without hope. You probably won't find that on a calendar or a Hallmark card or anywhere, right? But there's more. Job says this too, in case you didn't get his point. He says, my days are swifter than a runner. They fly away without a glimpse of joy. Now, as sad as it is, and I promise the whole series won't be like this, it's a reminder of this thing that we're all aware of that we don't want to be reminded of, but every time we look at our watch or a clock on the wall, we're reminded that time is going by really quick. And in fact, if you haven't gotten to this point in your life yet, you will eventually. You will get to a point where you quit thinking about how old you are, and you will begin thinking about how much time you have left. Now, this generally happens in your mid-40s, okay? It's not the same date for everybody, but you get to a point where instead of thinking, I'm 18, I'm 21, I'm 30, happy 40th birthday, and then somewhere in there between 40 and 50 for most people, you're going to wake up one day, another happy thought, and you're going to be like, I'm running out of time. Instead of looking back at how old you are, you're going to look out into the future, and you're going to sense that there's a finish line out there. And I remember when this happened for me, I kind of went into this neurotic thing to drive Sandra crazy, and I started saying this. I'd say, you know what? If we're going to do something, we better go ahead and do it. And she would say, do what? I'd say, I don't know. But if we're going to do something, we need to go ahead and do it. And she said, do what? I go, I don't know. But I feel like, all those things that one day and someday and we ought to think about and we should, all of a sudden there was a sense of, oh no, I'm running out of time. If we're going to make our move, we better make it. And she would just kind of roll her eyes. And then I would think, well, you know what? One day you're going to wake up and quit thinking about how old you are. And you're going to go, oh, you know, Andy, if we're going to do something, we need to go ahead and do it, because there's something that happens in our minds. We quit thinking about how old we are. We start thinking about how much time we have left. Now, I'm tempted to ask you to raise your hand if you've gotten there yet, but I won't do that. But some of you, I can just already see, even in the camera, you're kind of like, yeah, and others of you are like, I need to pray for Andy. He has issues. So anyway, and then if that wasn't enough, someone introduced me to deathclock.com. How many of you have visited deathclock? Yeah, about 6 of you. Yeah, deathclock.com. Deathclock. If you're at home, you should go ahead and not here because you won't be able to pay attention. Deathclock.com is awesome. You go to deathclock.com, if you can say it, and you type in some information about yourself, and then it tells you when you're going to die. Isn't that great? I mean, don't you want to know? And then you can cheat. You can say, well, I'm not really that much of a pessimist. And your spouse will go, no, you're a pessimist, okay? Because that knocks years off your life. Now, all of that, again, is kind of sad. But the point is, time just keeps on clicking by. It just does. And we don't, on one hand, we don't want to be reminded of that. On the other hand, we're always saying, what time is it? What time is it? What time is it? Look at the second hand. Where did the time go? I lost track of time. How could it be Christmas again? So maybe a better focus, rather than what time is it, even though you're going to keep asking that question, is what am I doing with my time? Not what time is it, but what am I doing with my time? Maybe I should begin trying to live my life or spend my time, because your life is your time, you know that. Maybe I should begin living my life, spending my time with the end in mind. Now, that's a big idea, and that's something we can't really argue with. And in that particular arena, we get some real help, not from Job. We're done with Job. We get some help from a guy we're all familiar with who wrote, whose story is a big part of the scripture, especially the Old Testament. His name is Moses. Moses, you may not know this, actually wrote one of the Psalms. When we think of the Psalms, we generally think of who? David, right? Because David wrote most of the Psalms. But actually, there is a psalm that was written by Moses. And if you want to turn to it and follow with me, we're going to be in Psalm chapter 90. Psalm chapter 90. This psalm was actually written by Moses. Now, let me tell you why Moses is a great person for us to go to when it comes to learning about time. Here's why. Moses, as you know, when he was a baby, he was a Hebrew, and he was taken by Pharaoh's daughter, and he was raised as an Egyptian. He learned to walk like an Egyptian, talk like an Egyptian, okay? He did, really. He actually did. That's where, anyway. So he walked and talked like an Egyptian. Then one day in his late teens or early 20s, he realized, you know what? I'm not an Egyptian. I'm a Hebrew, and the other Hebrews in my world are slaves, and he got fed up with the way the Egyptians treated the Hebrews, and so he decided to do something about it. So he killed an Egyptian, and then he killed another Egyptian. And then he thought, this is going to take like a long time. If I kill all the Egyptians, I don't know, that's not really what happened. Anyway, he killed 2 Egyptians, and he was run out of the country. He fled for his life, actually. He ends up in the wilderness. So he went from one extreme to the other. He was like a prince of Egypt, and now he's a fugitive from the Egyptians, living out in the wilderness, runs into a family of shepherds. They hire him. He becomes a shepherd. Now, here's the interesting thing. Moses spent 40 years. Just pause and let that settle in on you. 40 years. In fact, he spent what we would consider 40 of his best years, the best 40 years of his life. Moses spent 40 years doing nothing. Every day was the same. He did not even need a watch. If the sun was up, he was out with the sheep. If the sun was down, he was asleep with the sheep. If the sun was up, he was out with the sheep. If the sun was down, all he needed was to go outside and see where the sun was. He knew exactly what to do. 40 years. And Moses assumed no purpose, no God, no nothing. I'm just going to wait until I die and I finally get to the end of my time and my life is over. 40 years of nothing. And then after 40 years, God said, okay, I actually have a plan and purpose for your life. And he brings Moses out of obscurity. This is the part of the story you know. Takes him to Egypt. Says, let my people go. Pharaoh says no a few times. Pharaoh changes his mind. And then, Moses becomes a household name and leads the nation of Israel out of Egyptian slavery. And we all know him. So now, with all of that as a backdrop, I mean, he was like on top of the world. He's in the valley. He's back on top. 40 years of doing nothing. He had some incredible perspective when it came to time. And so in this psalm, Moses gives us his perspective on how to view time. And here's what he's going to tell us before we look together. He's going to tell us this. Context is everything. Context is everything. That God has created a context, and all of our little snippets of time, all of our little itty-bitty, seemingly at time insignificant lives, our 70 or our 80 years, and we think that's a long time, our little bitty, moments of time, all fall within the context of what he's going to say is age to age, generation to generation, God. That there's a context, and if we will begin to view our lives within that context, we can discover the point of our few minutes, our few hours, our few years. And if we don't look at it within a context, we will get to the point where we will ask this question, what's the point? Now, here's something interesting about you and me. When we're young, we think we are the point, don't we? Isn't that true? I mean, when you're 18 or 19 or 20 and life's ahead of you, in fact, if you're 18 or 19, 20, you're like, it's not? Yeah, you're at that stage where it's all about you, it's all about me. I am the point of life, that I am in the center and everything revolves around me. We can't help but think that way. And as we get older, we realize we're not the point, and we begin to ask this question, what is the point of life? Because as we begin to look into the future, here's what we see. Wow, everybody's kind of the same. We're born, we go to elementary school, we go to middle school, we go to high school, we either get a job or go to college. Oh, there's two unique paths. We go to college, we get out of college, we get a job. Now we catch up with the people who skipped college altogether. Now we both have jobs, and then we try to get married. Some people get married, some people get married 2 times, some people get married 3 times, some people try to get married, and then we have kids, then our kids grow up, then we retire, and then we play golf, and then we get sick, and then we die. Now, before you laugh, do you know of anyone that was kind of their story? Yeah, like everybody you've ever known, that's kind of a version of their story. And at some point in life, we're like, what is the point of that? And then if you believe in reincarnation, I got some bad news for you. You get to do that again. And again and again, and maybe you're right about that. The problem with reincarnation is you don't learn anything because you can't remember anything except, I think I was Alexander the Great, but I'm not really sure, or Cleopatra, or both, or, so, and I'm not discounting reincarnation, I'm just saying you just don't learn a lot because you can't remember any of it. And if all there is to life is that whole sequence of things, and that's kind of the American version, there's a European version, there's an Asian version, but wherever you go in the world, whatever culture, it's kind of the same. And at some point you begin to realize, I must not be the point. What is the point? And Moses says, heads up, I'm going to tell you. Because the reason the reason you think you are the point and the reason you wonder if there is a point is because you don't understand the context in which God has given you these few years to live. And so Moses explains all this to us in the form of a psalm. Now, a psalm is a poem, so it's a little flowery, it's a little tricky, but I want to read these verses to you, and we'll go through these together. Psalm 90, verse 1. Lord, you have been our dwelling. Our is the nation of Israel. You have been our dwelling place throughout all generations. Next verse. Before the mountains were born, or you brought forth the whole world, that is, even before creation. I love this. From everlasting to everlasting, you are God. From everlasting to everlasting, you are God. God, Moses is saying, okay, if you want to understand the bookends of your life, the bookends of your life is not your birth and your death. The bookends is everlasting to everlasting with God in the middle. The context for your existence, the only way you'll ever understand purpose, the way you'll ever come to a place where you can say, now I know the point of my life, is to understand that the context is everlasting to everlasting with God in the middle. That's the proper context for understanding the point of your life. He goes on, you turn people, and this is kind of like a Lord of the Rings Gandalf thing here. This is kind of cool. You turn people back to dust saying, return to dust, you mortals. Isn't that kind of great? Return to dust, you shall not pass. You can kind of see the wind blowing, and the thing. It's like, you return to dust, you mortals. And Moses is saying this, no matter how cool you are, rich you are, popular you are, and by the way, I'm Moses, no matter what you've accomplished or how famous you are, at the end of it all, God says, return to dust, you mortal. He goes on. This is amazing. You've heard something like this before, no doubt. 1,000 years in your sight are like a day that has just gone by. 1,000 years. 1,000 years is like right before the Crusades. He says 1,000 years in God's sight, like if you go from just before the Crusades to right now, that's like a day. And we're like, wow, that's quick. And then Moses says, no, actually, it's worse than that. Or like a watch in the night. A watch in the night, they would divide the night up into 3 or 4 periods, and they would have a guard out on the castle or out around the sheep, and you'd get the first watch or the second watch. So a watch is like 3 hours or maybe 4 hours. Moses says, for God, 1,000 years is like 3 or 4 hours. Now, don't do the math because you'll really be depressed. But if you think in those terms, how long is your life from God's perspective? Okay, if 1,000 years is like 3 hours and you live 70 years, it's like when you think about how fast the government spends money. Have you seen that thing where it's like, it's like when you die, okay, and let's say the government gets $300,000 or $400,000 of your money. Do you know how fast it's spent? Before you can say the word spent, it's gone. Your whole life, all this wealth you've amassed, and the government gets a piece of it before, way faster than anybody could write the check, it's spent. That's how quick your life is like, boom, your life's gone in this kind of context. It's like, well, just cheer us up. Why don't you, Moses? He's going, hang with me, okay? Because this is just the reality. This is the starting point for any discussion about a person's life or time, or like a watch in the night. Yet, you sweep people away in the sleep of death. They are like the new grass of the morning. You get up in the morning and there's new grass. And then he says this. In the morning it springs up new, but by evening it is dry and withered. Now, he's saying this from the perspective of eternity to eternity, from everlasting to everlasting. This is what a person's life is like. It's like, it's gone. It's gone. It's like grass in the morning, it dies. It's like a watch. It's less than a watch in the night. Now, God's point and Moses' point, and we know this because of Moses' life, and we know this because of other things Moses says, and we know this because of what follows. Moses' point is not, your life doesn't matter, even though that's how this feels. Moses' point is, hey, do whatever you want to because it doesn't matter. You're just dust to ashes and dust to dust. His point isn't that. His point is that your life is so brief. Your life is so common. Your life is so quick. Your life is so like grass. It's like dust that it is futile for you. And it is futile for me to try to create something meaningful on our own because the truth is we really don't have enough time. That if we try to jack up our life and our significance based on the bookends of life and death, he's saying, you know what? You just don't really have that much time to be that significant, really. Your only hope for purpose, your only hope for significance is to take your little moments of time and to interject them properly within the context of what God is up to in this grand story. Now, if that just seems so out there and intangible and impractical and you're not even sure you believe it, maybe the best way to understand this is to flip it around the other way. Because here's what you and I know. If you have ever spent time with or worked for a person that tried to make the whole world about themselves, they never got over being 16, where the whole world revolved around them. And if you're 16, I'm not trying to offend you. When we're 16, the world does revolve around us, but you got to move past that. But when you meet somebody who's 46 or 56 and they're still trying to be the center of the universe, have you ever worked for somebody like that? Been a neighbor to somebody like that? Voted for somebody like that? Didn't know it? Or watched as in other economies or in other nations of the world where a national leader rises up and it's just all about them. Here's what happens, and we've seen enough of this in history. I mean, in our lifetime, a national leader, a president of a country was hung by his own people. We've seen this, okay? Go back to the Second World War, we've seen this. Look at different countries in the world, we've seen this. Look at some of the biggest corporations in America, we've seen this. Look at some current politicians, we've seen this. Here's what happens. When a person refuses to give in to the fact that there is no significance apart from what God is up to in the world, and when they try to create significance just within the context of their life and their power and their wealth and who they know and what they're going to do, two things always happen. They always run out of time before they finish whatever it is they set out to do. And history never speaks well of them, ever. They always run out of time. And history never speaks well of them. Because intuitively we know when a person decides it's all about me and in my few years, I'm going to make it all about me, that I'm going to be the center, I'm going to be the point. Whenever a person does that, there's something intuitively inside of us that's like, that's just not right. That's not a pleasant person. That's a person that leaves a trail of broken relationships behind him or her. And it's usually, unfortunately, a him, isn't it? This is how dictators become dictators and destroy nations and lead the world into war. This is how somebody takes a healthy corporation and demolishes it and walks away with something that's totally about them. But in time, as time goes by, history never speaks well of that person because there's something very small and there's something very selfish and there's something that we don't want to emulate. And it's a reminder to us that in our few years, with our few years, our greatest play, our greatest opportunity is not about making ourselves known and not about making the whole thing about us. It's got to be something else, because even when a person has vast power and vast wealth and is able to do anything they want to with it, and they choose to make it all about themselves, when all is said and done, they run out of time, they generally do not have a good end, and when they're judged by history, they get a double thumbs down. You can't make this work. You can't find real lasting purpose if it's all about you. It's been tried. It's never been done. And Moses, who could have pulled it off after all these Moses, he says, no, the context for your life, it's not your life. The big play, the big game, the big angle, the big stake, it's not you. It's everlasting to everlasting with God in the middle, who has invited you in to that context to find meaning and purpose in the course of your days. He goes on, finishes this way, gives us some application. Our days, and how cool is this? This was written like 3,000 years ago. And the lifespan of people has come and gone and changed through the ages, but how relevant to us today. Our days may come to 70 years or 80, if our strength endures. Yet the best of them, the best years he's talking about, yet the best of them are but trouble and sorrow, for they quickly pass and we fly away. He's saying, you know what? Even if you've got a good life, there are going to be some years of sorrow. And that doesn't mean God doesn't love you. It doesn't mean God doesn't have a purpose for your life. It doesn't mean God's not paying attention. This is Moses, who experienced this very same thing. He says you're going to get 70 or 80 years, and there's going to be some trouble within the context, and eventually you're going to fly away. And then verse 11 is so confusing. At first, I decided to skip it. And then I thought, no, we have an intellectually superior audience. They can handle this. So, and verse 11 is so important because it connects to the point of this entire thing, which is verse 12. So here's verse 11. This is a big idea, but it's confusing in English. And I don't want to give you like a Hebrew grammar lesson or vocabulary quiz. So I'm just going to read it to you. Then I'm going to tell you what it means. You can check it out later. And here's what he says next. If only we knew. Implication, we don't know. If only we could comprehend the implication. Implication, we can't comprehend. If only we could see, but we can't see. If only we knew the power of your anger, talking about God's anger and his bigness and his roar. If only we knew the power of your anger. And then here's a really bad English sentence, but it's the best they could do in translating this Hebrew phrase. Your wrath is as great as the fear that is your due. You're like, huh? Yeah, your wrath is as great as the fear that is your due. See, it's very, very confusing. But let me tell you what this verse means. This is so huge. Here, I'm going to give you kind of a paraphrase. This is my paraphrase of this awesome verse. Here's what he's saying. And again, this is within the context of a discussion on time. If we could see God as he is, we would give him the reverence he is due. That's what he means. If we could see God as he is, we would give him the reverence he is due. Within the context of a conversation on time, here's what this means. This is so powerful. If we could see God as he really is, then we would present to him our 70 or 80 years within the context of what he's doing, because he is the great and mighty God who is everlasting to everlasting. But we can't see clearly. Now, this may help you. There are all kinds of theories about why God is so confusing and why God is so difficult to figure out God. The ancients, way back hundreds of years ago, writers said this. They believed that God's glory was so overwhelming, and they got this from the Old Testament, that God's glory was so overwhelming that if God revealed all of his glory, meaning if God completely revealed himself to you, you would die. You would burn up. It would be, your eyeballs would pop out, the skin would melt, you would just go away. Your just sand would blow, you'd be dust to dust, and now I'm just making that part up. But they said God's glory is so big and powerful that God can only go, glory. That's all you get. If I gave you more, you'd burn up. Glory. Every once in a while, it's like a little bit of me pops out, and we're like, God, show us your face. And he's going, no, you really don't want me to show you my whole face. Okay, it'd be like, and so now remember, this is Moses writing this. And Moses got as close to anyone who ever lived to seeing the glory of God. He came down from the mountain and his face was white, his skin was white. It's like they didn't even recognize him. He was glowing like, he was radioactive. Where you been? I've been with God. I didn't even see the whole thing. And whoa, I saw just enough to survive. Okay, this is all in the book of Exodus. And so the point is, there are things about the glory of God we'll never fully understand. And so he said, but if we could see it, then we would say, oh my gosh, in light of what you're up to, take my 70 or 80 years, and I want them to be a part of everlasting to everlasting. I want them to be a part of your plan. I realize I'm not the point, you're the point, and I want you to use my 70 or 80 years however you want to within the context of what you're doing in history. There's a cool little thing that happened in the Gospels. When Jesus was being arrested, this is so neat, and they came to arrest him, so it's like they got their swords and their spears and they got torches and they got the army, they're coming to arrest Jesus and he's with his disciples and they're all chickens and they're all running off, and they come to arrest Jesus and they say, the leader goes, "Are you Jesus?" And Jesus says, "I am," and he shouldn't have said "I am." Okay, that was the wrong thing to say, because I am is like one of the names of God. And so this is English, he said in Aramaic. So he says, I am. And when he said, I am, a little bit of glory slipped out. Boop, and it says they all fell down. They all fell down on top of each other. So there's Jesus standing there, the one to be arrested. And all the guys of the army, and they fell down. Why? Because little glory. And he's like, oh, sorry, I shouldn't say I am. Yes, I am Jesus, but I'm not going to say, we can say, I know it's kind of odd. It's like a little bit of glory. It was so powerful. He had to hide his glory, or it would just, everybody would be on the ground. So in the garden, it's like, I am. Oh, okay. So here's Moses' point. If we were ever exposed to the full glory of God, it would just be too much for us. And so he says, if we could see it, if we could see it and survive it, then we would say, here are my 70 or 80 years. If we could see clearly, we would live more purposefully. So, with all that in mind, Moses, what are we supposed to do? Okay, we're not going to argue with you. We've seen enough people try to make life all about themselves. Their time is all about them. We don't want to marry that person. We don't want to work for that person. We don't want that person to lead us. We don't want to visit their country. We've seen what happens when a person leverages their years and it's all about them. We don't want to go there. But at the same time, God, we don't know what you're up to. I mean, to say, fit into your purposes and plans, God, we can't see clearly. What should we do? And then Moses, with all of his wisdom and with all of his experience, here's what he says. And here's where we go for the next few weeks. He says this, teach us. Now he's praying, God, teach us to number our days. Teach us. Teach us because we don't do this by ourselves. Teach us because we don't know how. Teach us to number our days. In other words, literally, teach us to live as if our days are numbered. Teach us what it means to live as if our days are numbered, because our days are numbered. We know that. We don't like to think about it, but we're reminded every time we look at that second hand. So God, in light of what you're doing, in light of how grand you are, teach us to live. What does it mean to live as if our days are numbered? Now, numbering our days is something every person listening has done before. If you are a woman and you are married and you were once a bride, you know what it means to number your days. Hey, when are you getting married? 26 days, 4 hours, and 20 minutes. Ah! Remember? You numbered your days. And because you knew it was 26 days, ladies, you knew exactly everything you needed to get done before that day, right? If you've ever had an exam, hey, when do you have exams? A week and a half. What do you need to do between now and then? I need to do this. I need to do this. I need to read this, I need to do that. Why? Because you numbered your days. You knew exactly how many days. If you've ever presented a contract, if you've ever had a closing, if you've ever had a presentation, if you've ever had surgery, hey, when's your surgery? I got 2 weeks. What do you need to do? Well, I got to do this and do this and do this and do this. If you've ever had any kind of date coming up and you knew it was, how many days it was away, and there were things you had to do to prepare, you know what it means to number your days. So Moses says this, God, we don't know the day of our death. And since we don't know the day of your death, and there's so much about you we don't understand, teach us, oh God, teach us what it means to live as if our days are numbered when we don't even know how many days we have. Teach us that. Why? And look at this, is so awesome. Teach us the number of days. That, which means the result, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. This is so big. He says God, I realize, Moses would say, that I won't know how to make wise decisions if I don't make decisions within the context of the broad context of what you're up to, but within the context of my limited number of days. God, I will make better decisions. I'll make better financial decisions. I'll make better relational decisions. I'll make better parenting decisions. I will make better professional educational decisions. I will be far wiser if I make decisions within the context of knowing that my days are numbered. Teach me to number my days that I may gain a heart of wisdom. It's living with the knowledge that your days are numbered that drives you to better decision making. Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Instead of always saying, what time is it? No, God, I want to know what to do with my limited time. I acknowledge my time is limited, and since it's limited, since my days are numbered, show me what I'm to do with the days that I have left. Now listen, this is not depressing news. This is not, the end's coming, the end is near. This is not, if you think that way, you will run away from the reality that your days are numbered. But if you embrace the fact that God has given you life, and he's given you years, and he's given you years in life for a purpose, and the purpose isn't you. That the point of your life isn't you. You have lived long enough to know what happens when you make the point you. You become very, very lonely. If you have enough money, you'll always have people around you. You'll be very, very lonely. No one is attracted to a person for whom life is all about them. It is almost impossible to unconditionally love a person for whom life is all about them. You know that's not the answer, and you know your days are numbered. This is the key to bringing purpose to our few years in life. It's, God, I believe there is a grander story and I'm not the main character. I believe there's a grander narrative and I'm not the main character. I believe you're up to something from generation to generation. You are in the middle and you've invited me in for my 40 or 50 or 60 years. Now, God, teach me to live as if my days are numbered, that I might gain a heart of wisdom and make decisions that bring glory to you and not me. And here's Moses' point. Because my life is too brief to live for. My glory is too small to dedicate my whole life to. I'm but a flash. So I don't want to waste my 70 or 80 years living for my glory. I want it to be maximized within the grand scheme of what you're up to in this world. Now, Moses, who's a household name who accomplished some incredible things, that was his take on time. So going forward in this series, here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about some really practical things. Next week, I'm going to tell you the key to getting more done, okay? It's in the Bible. I'm going to talk about the key to getting more done. We're going to talk some about schedules. We're going to talk about focus. We're going to talk about priorities. We're going to talk about all those practical things that have to do with time. But here's what I don't want you to lose sight of. All of those incredible things the Bible teaches about time, it's not so that you can have a grander, more glorious, more organized life about you. Because that doesn't lead anywhere grand or glorious. It leads to loneliness and a story nobody wants to emulate. We know that. But all of these incredible insights we're going to gain in the next few weeks about time are all about gaining a heart of wisdom, living as if our days are numbered, and learning to live within the context of what God is up to in our world, and allowing him to leverage our skills and leverage our time for his glory rather than ours. In your bulletin, we put a little prayer in there I want you to be able to take home at the top of the back of your bulletin. And it simply says this. This is what I'd like for us to pray this week together. Wouldn't this be great if all of us got around this and all of our friends online as well? Heavenly Father, teach me to number my days, that I might gain a heart of wisdom and fulfill your purpose in my life. Teach me to gain a heart, teach me to number my days, that I might gain a heart of wisdom, that I might think about my time differently, use my time more wisely, and gain a heart of wisdom and fulfill your purpose for my life. Because here's the thing. We're to live as if our life has a point and we're not it. We're to live as if we're a part of a much grander narrative than our life will ever reflect. And we're to live as if our time is limited, because it is. And most importantly, we're to live as if we have been invited in to everlasting. That our lives are about everlasting to everlasting. And when we expand our thinking, when we begin to see the people around us within that context, when we see our opportunities within that context, when we see our money within that context, when we see our talent within that context, then suddenly we find purpose that goes way beyond anything we would ever be able to manufacture within the context of simply our birth and our death. But it begins right here. Lord, teach us to number our days. Teach us to live as if our days are numbered, that we may gain a heart of wisdom, and therefore offer to you as if we could see for who you really are. Offer to you our time and our lives in a way that bring glory to you and fulfill your purposes in the world. Purposes that are everlasting to everlasting. So I want you to pray that this week. Even if it doesn't make sense, begin to pray that this week. And the next week, we'll talk about some practical stuff. But how cool would it be to have a church this size in our communities, full of people who understand that the broadest context for our lives is not even our lives at all? Let's pray together. Father, that's a lot of stuff. It just makes our head hurt. It's just bigger. And then we're going to walk out of here and nothing will have changed. We still have to eat. We still have to go to work. We still have all the responsibilities and chores. And, we're going to walk out of here. Father, most of us are going to look at our watches. And that's just what we want to know is what time it is. But Father, I pray that maybe this week as we look at our watches, more than being obsessed with what time it is, it would be, what am I doing with my time? What am I doing with my time? And Father, would you give each of us wisdom to know what to do with this giant idea that we've been called to number our days and to live as if our days are numbered. Wherever that lands with us, Father, I pray for the 16-year-old, the 17-year-old, the 18-year-old that are so early on and they're already beginning to understand it's not about me. Father, they have their whole lives ahead of them to get this right. Father, for those who are in the years where they wish they'd heard this 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, give them wisdom to know what to do with what they've just heard. And then give us the courage to do it. And Father, I pray that we'd be a church, we'd be a congregation, we'd be a group who never makes the mistake of trying to live for our little itty-bitty fleeting glory, but it would be all about you. In Jesus' name we pray these things. Amen. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you next week.
Chẳng được quên khi cơn mưa đêm lại về. Em đã quên lời thề và ta như đông chìm sâu. Không cần mơ em anh nhận màu. Em chỉ cần mơ nào bye bye. Chỉ còn là những cơn mưa vô giá. Cho bên mơ em không mơ anh. Anh một đêm mơ chỉ cho bên em không được cần nhớ. Và chỉ có em không muốn nhớ. Và người ta bên nhau như ngã tớ. Muốn nhớ về say em chỉ có mấy em ở đây. Và anh như muốn chết đi nhưng không muốn em mơ mày. Tình yêu làm cho ta đau đầu. Không em như nằm mơ mộng. Anh như nếu mong cầu. Và mưa bên em hút sầu. Chắc có mà mai mà mơ. Chỉ có bên em nhưng là khó mơ. Mà đang dài em muốn bên ai. Anh không mong gì hơn. Chỉ mong em sẽ ở đây ôm anh thật gần. Anh chỉ mong đôi ta được có nhau. Mà đừng em đâu anh có em. Một đêm bên anh có em. Ta sẽ trao nhau môi hôn thật sâu. Ôm anh.
Living life, every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days. Fuck me, I'm looking in the mirror, so foggy, but I've never seen clearer. I don't really think anyone can save me, and honestly I'm not really sure I want saving. I like to be my own worst enemy. There's no risk if you don't try at anything, so I'ma just keep buying everything. See you in the next life, have to be a better me. I don't think that my head's on straight, gotta flip it and grip it and go and get an x-ray. What's wrong with me? I just feel weight pushing on my chest and it squeezes till I suffocate. Better change my mindset, meditate. It's pretty cool that I'm alive and have better days. I could walk, see, hear, I should celebrate. Think I could change my mind, maybe elevate. Living life, every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days. Yeah, all I need are some better days. Cause all I want, and I pray, I believe in the better days. I'm kinda stuck between a rock and a hard place. Do I work hard or live at my pace? You're only young once, yeah that's all great, but I also want a future where I'm okay. Living life is doing lots of cocaine. Wait no, it's living with no shame. Wait no, it's sleeping in on Sundays. I guess it's different for each of us and that's okay. Well I just wanna be happy, how to get there? Glad that you asked me. I think it's different for everyone. Some of us need work, others need fun. Some of us need purpose to overcome. But try to do what you love when it's said and done. Cause there's so many differences in each of us. Trust your gut, it can show you what you want. Living life, every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days. the sound of deafening fear. You gon' die if you try, you just might get a little bit of trouble, K-N-I-F-E, right in your side, you will never see me coming. You gon' die if you try, you just might get a little bit of trouble, K-N-I-F-E, right in your side, you will never see me coming. My energy is next level, so damn you better be careful. I got an angel and devil, he snaps me straight in the temple. I'm ready to be a rebel, I've got a lot of potential hidden inside of this vessel. That shit is so exponential. I need a first class ticket to the top, no limit. I don't play no gimmicks, I'ma take you to the clinic. If you want a taste, come at me and you will be replaced. They won't find a trace of you anywhere or any place. You gon'